How are you?
I'm great. How are you, John?
I'm doing really well. I'm happy that we are coming down toward the end of the year, and I'm really excited about this topic today.
Well, are you thinking about the new year?
I am thinking about the new year.
And what are you thinking about as you're thinking about planning and really kind of leading 2023? What comes to mind?
Well, the thing that comes to mind certainly is what we chose for the topic today, because what really comes to mind when I think about, so here's the deal. As we've said before in this Leadership Alive video cast, that we don't know that 2023 is going to be all that much better.
Yeah.
And we hope that it is, and we hope that we're in a new era. But we may have some challenges. And when I think about running a public safety agency or a first responder organization in 2023, the thing that comes to my mind is your best advantage is going to be to have an amazing, great team.
And John, I might be the pessimist for our discussion today. Everything I'm hearing from the clients that we're honored to work with, those that are in public safety, those that are in emergency medical services, and those that have reached out to us from this video series that are outside of public safety, healthcare, have all told me the same thing. They believe finding and keeping people in 2023 will be harder. They believe expenses due to inflation is skyrocketing. They believe the expectations of their customers are increasing. And for those that are within healthcare and within public safety and emergency medical services, they believe that because of surprise billing, balance billing kind of initiatives, that their reimbursement will drop to record lows. So I'm feeling like 2023 may be even harder than what we've seen over the past 3 years. And I believe that's going to require us to get even better at our practice of leadership. And that first thing that comes to my mind is what came to yours, which is how we will lead and leverage teams as a competitive advantage.
Yeah, a great way to think about that is as we're talking, much of the United States is bracing for a huge winter storm. And it's already starting to blow and snow and freeze all over the place. So if you think about the fact that you have to face a significant challenge, like a big weather event such as this, and you have to accomplish a bunch of things while doing it, like moving people around and making sure everybody's fed and making sure everybody stays warm and all of that, you will accomplish this difficult task much better by yourself or with a group of collaborative people. And the interesting thing is that difficulties, and it's kind of, this is a really interesting first responder thing, right? So in difficulties, often we zero in on self-reliance, right? Not team reliance.
And I was thinking similar. Your analogy got the brain and the wheel just screaming to say, boy, as we think about the weather event that much of our nation has experienced or is experiencing, we're in the midst of it at this very moment here in the Midwest. We don't question preparing. We don't question putting resources to it. We don't question all of the things we need to do to be ready. So I'm curious, are all of you listening today, do you put that same level of energy, effort, resources, both literal and figurative, into preparing our teams?
So that's such a wonderful question. I love that question because the obvious answer is we don't.
Right.
And the reason is, Aarron, and I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm curious what you think. But I think that we assume that membership makes the team. Let me say what I mean. We assume that assembling a group of talented and experienced people will result in a team, and that simply hiring somebody, giving them the title of operations director or operations manager or CFO or HR director, that this simply assembling a group of experienced and talented people will actually make a team. And that this assumption that membership makes a team, here's what I want to ask if you agree. I think it's a faulty assumption, but yet one that we default to often.
Yeah, such an interesting question and kind of a hypothesis that I would certainly agree with. And I might try to justify my agreement by adding a piece to it, which says, I think we also make an assumption that for the team, for us to measure the team's productivity, its effectiveness, it's this ability for it to be our competitive edge, we should focus exclusively on the tasks, the what and the how. And when that meeting gets done and we have crushed tons of material in a short amount of time, and we can cross them quickly off of the list, we will all leave patting each other on the back. We have accomplished the what and the how. We are an effective team.
So what's the problem with that? What then shows up that takes us from our belief that we're being effective because we've checked some things off the list, we've assigned some tasks, we've set some deadlines, and now we think that we're effective? What's missing?
So I might suggest that what's missing is all of those key essential components of a team. Patrick Lencioni talks about them quite articulately with his 5 dysfunctions. So let me try to say them differently. So let's imagine, John, you and I are the team, as we are here at SafeTech. And there's something tough that we have to talk about, some decision that we need to make. And so we use our time as the team to just make the decision. So at the end of the meeting, we've made it. We're going to do X. Have we really thought it through well? Are truly each of us committed to the decision? When push comes to shove, will we be able to hold each other accountable to it? And if we haven't done those first 2, will we actually get any results? Now, we all agreed we're going to do that thing, but sure enough, no results happen. So I think what's missing when we jam-pack agendas, when we have people attend the meeting due to simply a title, a role, we certainly can decide lots of things, the what and the how, but I really wonder if we deliver. I really wonder when it becomes difficult, like I believe it will be in 2023, if we will stand together, if we can have productive disagreement that won't jeopardize trust, if we're willing to make commitments to that agreement, I will allow you to hold me accountable and we'll see results. I think we miss all of those things because we just want the meeting done. What do you think?
I agree, and I think that we do that because the what and the how and the execution of the immediate task and our living in a reactive paradigm keeps us from really realizing the horsepower that can be generated when a bunch of people pull in the same direction. And I'd like us to talk a little bit about how we could do that with our team in 2023. If what I'm thinking is not only do I want to survive the difficulties that may come in the coming year, but I actually want my organization to thrive and to be on top of things. So I just want to share a little story about one of our clients. I just spent time this morning with the chief of this large agency that has nearly 1,000 EMS employees and is a very large and busy provider in both urban and rural and suburban areas. But they've struggled for a number of years to really find their competitive edge in attracting people. And you and I have both worked with them, and but one of the things that we noticed was that the team was not a team. It had talented people. In fact, it had people on the team that were some of the best educated with some of the highest levels of degrees there were, but they were not a team. And over the course of 7 years of work, we finally saw them make the bold decision to do what you're talking about, is to do more than address the what and the how and get stuff done, and simply say, how do we begin a team? And it took some very painful surgery, and it took some very careful work in relationship building and actually tending and cultivating the team. But what's really amazing is they are not only getting through, they are starting to thrive. They have built a team that feels like a team, and there is a true level of excitement. You can hear it when you talk with them. And when the team is together, there is lots of smiles, there is lots of humor, there is lots of optimism about the difficult tasks ahead. Now, that doesn't mean people aren't working hard. That doesn't mean that they're not really having to, but what feels lighter to everybody is it feels that they're pulling together.
Wow, such an incredible story. And as I hear you tell that story, a few things come to mind that really seem to match some of the experiences that I've also had with many of our clients. And there's two things that I'm regularly getting asked to help organizations with. And the first is developing the leaders in the middle, but the other is working with teams. And as I heard you tell that story, two things popped into my mind. I know there's the storming, norming, and those kind of characterizations of teams. And frankly, I'm not necessarily the biggest subscriber to that. Certainly when we pull some people together to develop a product, to get that special event put together, there might be those. But John, I think you and I are talking about a team that leads an organization, leads a department, leads a division, and that team is often there for a long period. And I heard you, I think, talk about kind of some work that happened internally with that leader. And then I also thought I heard you talk about some work that the team did. And I might just suggest for a moment what I've noticed when teams are really functioning well and when teams aren't, and from the internal side. So if I'm a member of the team, if I'm the leader of the team, really three things I wanted to just kind of call out amongst many. And the first is when I see teams work really well, extraordinarily well, or when I see them not work well, is when they're, especially the leader of the team, is not comfortable with the uncomfortable. If the point of the team is to get together and never disagree, never have a moment of passion, never find yourself in a position where you can't all agree, you have to vote on something, I will likely find myself doing the next thing that I think happens on the internal side, is I will find workarounds. gosh, I'm really struggling to hold John accountable. His part of the company is failing. Boy, I don't really want to talk to him about that. So instead, what I'll do is I'll have the team do the work for John. I think it was something you shared with me as we were talking and prepping and sharing our learning for this webinar today, was some wonderful work from Adam Grant. And I'll say it wrong, so you correct me, but he talked about how teams fail when they do the work that should be the work of an individual. So that's the second thing I often see. And the third thing I see is when the leader won't lead the team. I think that a team is as organic as an individual is. I think it has behaviors that we want to call out and get more of. And I think it has behaviors that we want to not get more of. I think it needs expectation conversations. I think it needs an accountability. I think there's times it needs influence. I think a team can be as organic as I can be. So for example, please.
No, keep going. Because I'm going to do a summarize.
Yeah, I was just going to do an example of this. I've noticed an organization that I'm working with and teams that I've worked with, really the increased use of profanity. And I'm by no means a wilting flower, and I've spent 30 plus years in public safety and emergency medical services, but it caught my attention. And wanting to be an organizational psychologist, that's the PhD that I'm working on, I just wanted to study it and think about it. And what I noticed was once the first F-bomb came out and no one said anything, then another came out and another came out and another came out and another. So teams are as organic as we are as human beings. And so if I set an expectation or don't set an expectation, a team is likely going to kind of do it or not do it.
So your three things, what was the first one?
Being comfortable with the uncomfortable.
Second,
somebody's got to lead it. And then the CEO workarounds.
So with all three of those in mind, especially the first one, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, there's an old anonymous saying that says that teamwork, simply stated, is less me and more we. So here's what I want to couple that with, is that if you're going to have an effective, functional, flourishing team that makes the work in 2023 seem less difficult and gives you more energy and more reserves in your tank, if that's the kind of team you want, it is going to change you. There is nothing that will grow you as a human being and mature you more than deeply immersing yourself in teamwork. Ask anybody who has played on a consistently winning championship team or worked in a consistently winning corporate team or a consistently high-performing military team, and all of them will talk about how it changed them inside. So this first thing I think about teamwork in 2023 is to recognize these three things you're talking about, because all three of those, being comfortable with the uncomfortable, paying attention to the ease with which we do the workarounds, and then really leading the team, all of that is going to cause us some self-examination and for us to work with what's inside of us, whether that be fear, whether that be a lack of confidence, whether that be a sense of not knowing if I'll be successful, or adversity to risk. All of those things will get highlighted as you begin to really immerse yourself in a team.
And the reason why I often begin thinking about teams ironically, by first focusing on the I, which doesn't exist in teams, is because I have to do my own work if I want to actually be a productive part of the team. I'm a fan of the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, but there's DISC and there's many other assessments. But what's my preference for receiving and processing information, which might be drastically different from the rest of the team? So my preference may be structure. Other team members may be spontaneity. And so that can be a conflict. John, you and I, my preference is structure. You have a gift for the spontaneity. So we can make that as our conflict between us, right? I want to just dial it in, write it down, get it on a piece of paper, never deviate for it. And we meet in the morning before we go see the client, and you say, you know, I was thinking, and you have something brand new. So it can be a conflict, or we can say, wow, what a wonderful way to bring those together. So I think there is an I in team, which means I have to do my own work to be a productive, active member of the team, and somebody must lead the team. If we simply all come together, a dozen of us, we sit at the table, it's just going to be a hot mess. Does somebody go, whoa, wait a minute, hang on, Aarron, you're dominating. We haven't had a chance to hear from John yet. Well, I don't have anything to say. John, I know you do. If you're going to be part of this team, you don't get to sit there, not say a word, and leave and talk about how, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody has to own the team and actively manage this organic being that the team is.
And so that leads me to say, if we're going to do that, so I think one of the first things you have to accept as a leader of a team is the I that you're talking about, is that I have to do my own work. And that when I get in that team meeting, so you and I have been talking and comparing notes because you and I this fall have been facilitating a lot of team retreats. So we've been comparing notes. And one of the things that frequently happens at a leadership team retreat is that the dysfunction comes to light. And what happens, so how that comes to light is that truth gets to be told. Somebody says, so I'm still pissed off about what happened back in May. And that we didn't handle this right, and I felt disrespected, and we didn't. So when that comes out, right? So if the person sitting next to me says that, there's a good chance that my emotion will get activated.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I want to say about the I. If you're wondering about what work you have to do in the team, that work will show up often by an emotional charge. It will show up also when you want to restrict information, when you don't want to say what you're really thinking, or you don't want to tell what really happened. All of that is about work that you have to do. Because to work in a team is to notice the fragility of our own egos. It's to notice where our own personal work is. And in order to get comfortable with the uncomfortable, we have to look inside. And the question that I find myself asking, and I'm curious what you think about this, the question I'm when I see someone's emotion go up and their hot button gets pushed, the question I'm asking is, what do you internally own about this?
Yeah, for sure. And and the message that we want to give, I think, is twofold, which is, when teams are really working well, there is so much trust. We've had so much unproductive time. We've made so many deposits, whichever philosophy you use, Covey's deposits and emotional bank accounts. And we talk a lot about unproductive time, where like Brene Brown talks about, there's some vulnerability that grows and strengthens trust between us. But when that happens, we can get emotional, we can share, we can disagree, we can fight it out. But it never even occurred to me that that somehow would have jeopardized trust. We were debating, disagreeing about the thing, not about John or Aarron. But here's the other thing. When you shared that example about the person who might have still had been angry about that thing that happened in July, how much productivity did we lose since July? How much emotional energy was taken up by the team and team members? So
Right.
you started with such a great encouragement, which is, if there's 12 of us on this team, 12 of us in the boat that the team is on, how hard is it when only 2 of us are rowing? And I bet you some of you listening feel that way. I'm always the one who has to do this. I always have to call that out. I always have to this. What we're trying to encourage you is that we can get all 12 going the same way, but we have to make the same investment as we would for the major snowstorm, or we would for the MCI, or we would for the budget.
So you and I often say this, so I have departed a little bit from Lencioni's pyramid a little bit to say that what we need, what really pulls a team together is a purpose. If what we want to run is an amazing, well-respected, admired EMS organization, if that's what we're driving for, we have to get clear that we are all about winning that championship. And that's the first thing. That's the reason we come together. That's why I brought you with your HR abilities. That's why I brought you with your clinical abilities. That's why I brought you with your operational expertise. We have to be clear about what it is that we're doing. And then the second piece around that is really what you talk about in terms of this unproductive time, but it's really the investing of the time.
Yeah.
And I just ran a retreat where the chief executive officer said, how much time do we need to do this retreat? And he said, do you need more than a day? And I said, yes, we need at least 2 days. And if you actually really want to do the work, we need 3 days. And now we're a month away from that retreat, and he's saying, I'm so grateful I took 3 days because we wouldn't have touched it in 2. And this gets to that second part when we have clarity about why we're together, what we're trying to do. It's really investing the time that it takes. And this is so difficult for our clients, who are largely public safety, healthcare kind of people, who say we simply don't have the time. And yet what I hear you arguing, Aarron, is we are spending many times more the time that it would take to build the team, and simply dealing with the ineffectiveness of our team and the drama that surrounds our team.
Absolutely. And all of you know it. Think to yourself, the meeting after the meeting, the hanging out in somebody's office, venting, where there is no reason that a high functioning team couldn't easily hold that, easily be able to have that conversation. I'm so appreciative, John, that you talked about, first and foremost, we need a purpose, we need a focus. And respectfully, all that are listening, our purpose and focus is not the job we do. If you're an emergency medical services organization, that's not our purpose and focus. One of our clients has their focus being they want everyone to have a positive experience if they interact with that organization. internal, external customers, employees, patients, nurses, doctors, you name it. And he has brought a team together who shares that same feeling. And while yes, they have to work out all of the what and the whys, like, or what, all the what and the hows, like all of us have to do, their why always comes back to that purpose. So one thing I might suggest, and I'm curious if you feel similarly, is also a team, in addition to a purpose and a focus, it has to be sacred. So as you were telling the story about one day, maybe 2, 3 would be great, I thought what you were going to say was, and now as we got closer, something came up, new crisis on the agenda, can't do the 3 days, John, 2. And then as your day got closer, because I've certainly experienced this multiple times, 1 day. And then when we get there, we're going to start a little bit late because we all got to go to this thing, and a few people will drop off at noon because they have a Zoom they need to do. If you want to have a highly productive team, the team and its time must be sacred. It doesn't get bumped. We don't cancel it. We don't step over it. And if you tell me that you don't have anything to talk about, great. Use the time to just say, boy, what's on the radar? Use the time to check in with each other. But if you want to have a great functioning team, I think that time has to be sacred, and I don't think it gets bumped. What do you think, John?
Well, here's what we're discovering. In the post-COVID era, everybody's trying to shortcut things because we learned that during COVID, we can get some stuff done by Zoom. And so we are using shortcut ways to get stuff done. And I think we should suck up every bit of that and be much more efficient. We do not need to waste a lot of time together. But here's what's missing. What's missing, you call it unproductive time, I call it informal time, but this informal time together to connect, to discuss, to brainstorm, to deal with the inevitable head butting that comes when you have a high talented and a high experienced team of people coming together. If you don't have time to do that, all of that stuff just festers.
Yeah. And thank you for kind of mentioning the unproductive time. I know John knows what I mean when I talk about it, but just real briefly to share with those that are listening. I use that word deliberately. It's clearly not what I believe. I believe the time is hugely productive, but I use that word to get a little bit of an emotional response from you because we don't measure it.
Yeah.
We measure UHU, time on task. We measure our financial AR days. We measure clinical performance. We measure all kinds of things. And we then say, well, having that meeting every week, getting everybody together will affect those other things we measure. I think there should be a measure that says, hey, supervisors, you were working shifts, you were responding to calls, you were delivering supplies. Boy, very productive. You're in the red. Negative. Look, you didn't have much on your shift today. All you did was run around and hang out with crews. Unproductive, quote unquote. You're in the green. It's when we build and strengthen the relationships. Another way to maybe think of it is a wonderful leader that I was talking to from a medical device company. He talked about collisions. And he said, we use Zoom a ton. And I think Zoom is great if we're going to figure out, hey, John, should we get these quarter zips? And, should the logo be in color or not? And, do you want the color up or down? Zoom's great for that. To use a Simon Sinek, the what and the how. But collisions don't happen over Zoom. Collisions when it's just, oh, John, hey, gosh, seeing you makes me think of this. Or we're sitting someplace maybe we're having some lunch, we're talking about something, and John says something, and I go, I haven't thought of that. That really could apply over here. We don't have collisions. And without collisions, I don't think we have creativity. And without collisions, I don't think we innovate. And of course, this was coming from an executive leader of a medical device company, which innovates and makes new things to make our lives better.
And wouldn't it be great? So I love this collisions. So here's another little element of that. Wouldn't it be great if we're all at the same level in terms of our emotional intelligence and our inner life and our ego development and our sense of inner confidence and all of that? That would be wonderful, but we're not.
No.
And so what happens is that people who may be at some level of ability to take risks, they may have a high level of confidence, they can in the Zoom meeting bowl over everybody else.
Yeah.
But when I have collisions, or when I have time and space, and what Amy Edmondson in her book, The Fearless Organization, talks about psychological safety. When we have time to create psychological safety, and let me pause here. Psychological safety is not some woo-woo idea where we kowtow to everybody's hurt feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Psychological safety is when a team builds, and I'll use a strong term, builds the sort of kick-ass maturity that allows it to talk about difficult issues. And that often takes time. So when people are not at the same levels of their confidence and perhaps their emotional intelligence, it takes time for some people to come up and say, well, I actually disagree with that. I actually think we should go a different direction because we're really not considering this element or segment of our workforce.
Yeah.
For that to come out, it takes a situation where people believe that they won't be punished, humiliated for speaking up. They'll be willing to ask questions. And there's this wonderful Adam Grant quote, another from the Wharton School, wonderful organizational psychologist. But Adam Grant says that it's often not the smartest person in the room that helps the team make the smartest decision. It's the person in the room who's willing and feels safe enough to ask the hard question. Like, why are we doing that? Or why do we keep talking about this over and over again? Or why haven't we fired this person? We talk about them over and over again. They suck up so much of our time. Why haven't we done it? And he said the person that makes us the smartest is the one who's willing to ask the questions. But the questions often do not emerge. That sort of curiosity and questioning does not emerge if we haven't spent the time to create a safe environment where the quieter voices get heard. And so I love that because that's part of the collision thing, right? That's when I've been in the room long enough and finally I raise my hand because I'm a quieter person and say, we talked about this last year. Why haven't we fired that person?
Right. Yeah. And I want to also build on what you were just talking about. You mentioned that all of us are at the same place in our own personal, professional maturity and our use of things like emotional intelligence and such. So, John, I imagine some of the best teams are built when we fill those teams with people who are very much like us. Wouldn't that make the most sense, right? So as a Myers-Briggs, I'm an ENTJ. So, if I had my leadership team full of ENTJs, it would probably be highly efficient. We would quickly get through material. There would be not much disagreement because they kind of would see things through the lens that I see. Wouldn't that make really high functioning teams if the team was made up of people that were very much like us?
Boy, that would sure work if the goal was smooth sailing, right? But that's not how good decisions get made.
Yeah. And I don't think it'd be smooth sailings either, because just because I think it's a great idea, I think where great decisions come is when we do have differences of opinions, when we see it from a different perspective. So I bring that up in both with a little tongue in cheek, but I'm working with several teams that are structured that way. The leader selected people for the team or people for the organization that were very much like them. And this comes back to that internal work. If I select someone who is very much dislike me, I'm an extrovert. So if I pick an introvert, that's going to get under my skin. They don't have an immediate answer. They need to think about it. They need to reflect on it. I'm a intuition. My gut tells me something. And somebody says, well, wait a minute, we need to gather some data. I'm a strong thinker. And they say, well, I'm not sure how I feel about that. And the list goes on. If I can't and won't do my own work, I'm just going to be challenged. I'm going to be threatened. I'm going to feel fear. I'm going to have emotional responses versus saying, wow, that really makes us better when not only does somebody have the courage, we've created the environment, they feel safe to be able to disagree, especially for those that may even not have the rank, authority, position, title that we have.
So a way I love to teach this is you've seen some of the great caper movies like Ocean's 11 and all of that. So one of the things that you notice about these, of course, made up and very Hollywood kind of things, but one of the things you see about these amazing teams that pull off these extraordinary capers in the movies is the amazing diversity of the characters. Of course, that makes a great story, but it also makes a really, really great team.
Yeah.
And one of the key questions that you and I find ourselves asking teams is, do we believe that difference makes us better? Mm. And because if they don't believe that, they will keep hiring people just like themselves.
Yeah.
And yet the research overwhelmingly shows that the opposite is true.
Yeah. And there's plenty of research also out there about how this shows up and creates incredible failures. From the Challenger disaster, where the engineer tried to advocate for the temperature and the shrinking of the big O-ring, to thankfully now the sterile cockpit for the FAA, where the co-pilot has the same authority as the pilot and not only is encouraged but expected to disagree, to just culture systems that came out of healthcare. But when we didn't build a team where people are different than us, think different than us, act different than us, we can see plenty of examples of great failures. But said differently, we can see also really great examples of great successes when leaders especially are willing to be uncomfortable. Hire somebody who's smarter than you. Hire somebody who thinks differently than you, approaches it differently, that will disagree with you. Boy, think about the results we'll have when we bring that different perspective.
So if we're going to have difference, and the vast majority of teams that we see have difference, what happens is the difference is just often silenced, or then it just becomes drama. Yeah. So here's my next point in these super functional teams, is that there is always striving for clarity around expectations, around structure, and how decisions will be made. So what we see often is that people don't have a common shared understanding of what the expectations of the team are. How will we as a team discuss certain things? How will we work on that? How will we structure that? And then one of the things that's really, really important is to keep talking as a team about how will decisions be made. Because here's what happens. If it's an ironclad dictatorship And I have a chief who says, I want us to be a really functional team and us to have input and really work together and pull together. But we don't sit and talk about how the final decision will be made. And the chief does not explain, if she or he wants to make that decision alone, how that is going to be done. If we don't have clarity around that, the energy goes out of the team. So clarity about sort of how we're structuring the team, and when the hierarchy hats are taken off and we can have a frank discussion without hierarchy, and also what we're expecting of each other in terms of participation and in terms of commitment once a decision is made, but how that decision will be made is really, really important. And so these things, so somebody has asked me recently, so what do you talk about on these retreats? Well, a lot of what we talk about is how we'll be together. And it's a lot about this, about this expectation structure and decision making.
And John, that topic aligns with one of the things I was thinking as well, which is often teams are quick to form and then immediately dive into the work and then really struggle. Or leadership teams often will ask us, both of us, to come and do strategic planning. It must be on some list somewhere that you must do some strategic planning. And I will often encourage them first to do some team investment time. Nope, we need the what and the how. We need the strategic planning. And I find that to often be very ineffective, and to really fall flat because the team doesn't feel comfortable. How we make decisions isn't known. Safety isn't understood. We haven't made those investments into the team. We haven't committed time. So the end result of a strategic planning is very superficial because nobody was really invested. I didn't really feel like disagreeing. I didn't really think my voice was going to be heard. I didn't really know if it was going to matter. And so we come out with a really, indifferent document. Begin with investing in the team. Do that stuff. What is our purpose? What will be our focus? How will decisions be made? You and I both lead teams through getting clear about their norms. I will for the team, but I expect from the team. Teams will often work on deal breakers. We talk about fidelity. A team is a relationship. And many of us are in relationships with those people that we love and live with. And those relationships have rules, they have boundaries, and we spend some time figuring them out. A team's going to need to do the same thing before we quick rush to the end result. If we want to have an effective team, let's begin with investing in the team and then get the results. But we don't do that, I think, often because we're just quick to jump to the results, right? We're so myopic with we have to get results versus slowing down and getting better results, more significant results, if we'd first invest in the team.
So let's close this out by making a suggestion. Let's make a suggestion that in 2023, that we would suggest that your ability to address whatever comes in 2023 and bringing your organization to a higher level of performance and also a higher level of leadership joy will be the result of investing first in the team. And so our suggestion is get together with your team, not to talk about the crisis du jour or the next 3 months of work, but instead to talk about how to be a team. What you find enjoyable about the team, what you don't find enjoyable about the team, how the team feels like it's lightening the load and how the team feels like it's mucking up the load. All of those things, that's the beginning, is to start investing in the team. And a simple question is, does it feel like our team is getting better, or is it stuck, or is it falling back? Because even if it's a small growth, if the members of the team genuinely and heartfelt feel that the team is getting better, you're on your way.
And I wanted to add the part that you just alluded to, which is, please don't make investing in the team so big that you don't do it. Oh gosh, Aarron and John, we can't afford to go off-site for 2 days and we couldn't get everybody together. Can we just be 10% better? So maybe that first team investment is, instead of the next time we get together and we have the jam-packed agenda, throw the agenda away and just say, get a couple pizzas and let's just check in. Let's spend the time investing in each other. Met with a leader this morning, and we were talking about, as he's helping to heal a team that has gone through some trials and tribulations, he pulled up his agenda, and like most of us do, the agenda was full of the what and the how. We just added 3 things to the agenda. First was simply, like me, he likes to structure things, so he scheduled some informal, or shall we call it unproductive time. Then it was checking in how the week went. Not how many sick calls did we have, just how was your week? And the third was to hunt for the good. Something, John, you've talked about. And they called it just to search for the wins. And then we got into all of the rest of the stuff. Maybe that's 5 minutes, maybe that's 10 minutes. But there's a real message there. The first thing on every agenda, every time, is the team. So let's just be 10% better. Let's not make a 2 year's resolution that's so big that we don't do it. Let's just be 10% better.
Yeah, and I would just use your words to say, make your team sacred in 2023.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. Happy New Year, and wishing you all the best. And we'll look forward to getting back together with you in 2023.
Be well, be safe.